Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Yellow Alert, where we take a look at the dev posts over the past week and break them down for you. So first up, we had a post from Annabelle Boo Huxley, and this was a couple of weeks ago. It says, looks like we're getting clouds for the IAE this month. So then we basically had a long list of people complaining about clouds. So I think at the moment people are really struggling with clouds and obviously for their system specs and stuff like that. So people have been talking about, the option to turn them off, which is an option at the moment. But then you get into that realm of, people can use that to their advantage. So either everyone's going to just turn off their clouds, or some people will turn off their clouds and be able to see people at greater distances than people that leave them on. You get this in other games when people turn off ground clutter so that they can see objectives and things easier, or enemies in the grass, stuff like that. So it's a divisive one, it's a tricky one, but we did have a response from Divi, I'm assuming, from CIG, and it says, the gameplay impact has been taken into consideration, and the idea is to only have the option to disable them entirely until the performance impact of the volumetric clouds is low enough so they can be on for everyone, always. So that's good, at least, they're taking that into consideration, and it's not going to be a thing we can do forever. Hopefully they can get it to a point where the impact is, negligible, but, we'll have to see. Okay, so next up we had a post from Robert Spinoza, and it says server meshing tier 0 next year. Called it. So it says, there's basically an excerpt here that says, when will we see persistent streaming and server meshing in the PU? And the answer from CIG was, our current aim is to release persistent streaming and the first version of the replication layer, ideally between Q1 and Q2 next year. We'll then follow up with the first version of a static server mesh, barring any unforeseen technical complications between Q3 and Q4 of next year. And then there's a fancy picture, they say we're aiming to increase our player count, and our expectation is that we will support scenarios where 100 players can see each other at reasonable frame rates, which sounds good. So then we had another question from Stabilitis, who knows? And he says 100 players is an expectation, so 50 for quite a while. Even at 100 players, then ships, very expensive ones at that, such as the Polaris, Idris and Javelin, with fairly large crew requirements, are now surely dead in the water for an even longer time. This whole meshing and shards approach seems very at odds with what was told many years ago. Is it a total shift in approach? Have things changed? Maybe the idea pitched was simply a dream or concept without means to deliver technically? Either way, it would be really nice and decent to know CIG's view on those capital and larger ships. Are they being held back to 100 plus player counts, or will they come sooner and simply be able to hold 25 to 75% of the server's players on a single ship? Do I regret owning a Polaris? A little bit at the moment. So then Jake Acapella come back and said, we're definitely targeting for far more than 100 players in a shard and or space. The number referenced in the Q&A is in regards to the initial release. We do plan to increase this further as we improve the tech and implement new features, i.e. Vulkan, etc. So I think really the thing to bear in mind here, Stabilitas and everyone else, is you can't take the first iteration of something as gospel and say, well, that's not going to work. I mean, there has to be a building block, and if that building block is 100 players, that's more than we've got now. And if we can then build that to 2 to 5 to 1,000 to 1,000,000, who knows, where the future's going to take us. So maybe don't throw all your toys out the pram just yet. Let's see how it goes first. Okay, so last up we had a post from Danakar Endil, and it says, Redeemer and other ships with turrets. Are players getting punished for manning turrets now? I noticed this peculiar behaviour the first time while testing Alpha 3.14 PTU, where the Retaliator turrets randomly seemed to drop down in the number of available shots. This was the only ship at the time where I observed this weird behaviour, as all the other ships with multiple turrets had a static number of shots when equipped with the same type of weapon. I did all my testing with laser repeaters back then. Now, however, I also noticed similar issues with the Redeemer. When entering the top man turret for the very first time, I put 2 size 5 Galderine repeaters on both turrets. I had 113 shots for each gun. However, upon exiting the turret and hopping in the lower man turret, I noticed that I now only have 60 shots for each gun. Going back to the top turret, and sure enough, that one now also only shows 60 shots per gun. Similar issue with the front remote turret, as that one is slaved to the pilot, but can also be controlled by a remote operator as well. When I used the remote turret seat, I noticed that I had 133 shots for each gun, 2 Panther repeaters. Exiting the seat and hopping into the pilot seat, I saw I had 2 times 84 plus 2 times 133. I put size 3 Panthers on all of them. So the pilot has 2 times 84 shots by default when you equip them with gimbaled size 3 Panther repeaters on those size 4 hardpoints, and they appear to have their own capacitor plus 2 times 133 shots for the front turret. I had also equipped these with Panther repeaters. Now here's where things get interesting. I then went back to the remote turret seat for the front turret and manually turned it off, which apparently also turned off the systems of the pilot, which definitely should be fixed as this is not supposed to happen. Then I went back to the pilot seat and turned it off and on again. Suddenly it had 2 times 84 shots as expected, plus 2 times 251 shots. So by turning off the remote station, which for some reason was still draining power from the capacitor even though there was nobody in the seat, it had gained 118 shots per gun. So it definitely seems like CIG is now sharing capacitor power between turrets for some reason. Personally, I do not like this approach at all, as it effectively punishes people on multi-crew ships when manning more than one turret. In my personal opinion, each turret should have its own capacitor instead of having them all leeching off a single central capacitor, where the more people man your turrets, the less shots each gunner has available before having to wait for the recharge. I really enjoyed the initial turret gameplay that CIG introduced in Alpha 3.14, where the Mercury, for example, had 2 times 250 shots for the top turret and 2 times 250 shots for the bottom when equipped with Panther repeaters. This actually made things enticing for people actually wanting to man the turrets, as it was suddenly fun and also made turrets more of a threat because they could shoot for a long time. But now it seems like CIG wants to punish you if you bring more people to man more than one turret on a ship with multiple turrets available. Imagine having one gunner in one of your Mercury turrets having lots of fun with 2 times 250 shots, but then a second person mans the other turret only to see that now both only have 145 shots each before they have to wait for a recharge. Or imagine a hammerhead suddenly going down to only 50 shots for each turret or something because you managed to find 6 people who wanted to sit in a turret. Forcing ships to use shared capacitors would actually make things worse again for turret gameplay just after things were starting to get a little better. The main benefit of turret gameplay was that each turret had their own dedicated capacitor, but now it seems CIG wants to take the fun away and make turrets useless again, just when they were starting to get fun. As each turret pod already has its own individual radar installed, I think that each turret pod should also get its own individual capacitor installed. The way that you ensure that turrets will be fun and people will actually want to man them. Forcing turrets to use a shared capacitor would only make turrets unfun again, in my opinion, and this should not be the course that CIG should take. Please give each turret its own capacitor instead of punishing multi-crew ships with the shared capacitor approach. And that was at Yogi Clap. It's a long one. So Yogi Clap has come back and said, turret capacitors were always shared among all turrets. However, in 3.14, the regen and ammo load numbers were so big that a single turret capacitor would fulfill all weapon requirements. That was done to limit the amount of work we had to do for 3.14. In 3.15, we now started to slowly move towards a proper capacitor sizing system, e.g. the pure fire time of a Hurricane turret is now half of a Cutlass turret. Both share the same turret weapon capacitor, but Hurricane has twice the guns. We originally wanted to go for single weapon capacitors per turret, but it would have multiplied the amount of markup for the larger ships, as we would have needed to create different pipes per turret hardpoint to make sure that they are not shared between turrets. That was important back then, as it considerably cut down the work that had to be done on the content side. Whether we keep the system or work towards isolated turret capacitors, we do not know yet. If items are shared, there is certainly a need to communicate that between players, which can make a big difference in the multi-crew experience. Either way, we certainly did not want to take the fun away, We're just sorting out balance numbers and trying to figure out how to go forward. I hope that will make sense. And I think that does make sense. I mean, again, we are in the infancy of the new changes to turret gameplay, and now we're complaining again. We really do need to let them work on this stuff first before we start giving them a hard time. The idea of sharing your turrets over the whole ship makes sense. Having multiple capacitors for each turret doesn't really make any logical sense. All you need to do is just make sure that you have a capacitor that's big enough to handle, within a reasonable spec, all the guns on your ship. So if you've got laser guns and you've got 6 people manning 6 turrets, if one person mans one turret, then they should be able to fire more shots. It's logical. So I don't really see the problem. I mean, so long as, if you've got one person in a turret, but they've got more ammo, then it will equate to having, say, 2 people in the turret, but having half the ammo. You're still firing the same amount of shots. You're just doing it over the 2 guns instead of 1. It's a bit of a strange argument, but I understand it. But I think that they're working towards it, and I think that it's sharing capacitors is not going to be a problem in the future. And if anything, like they said, it's going to make you think more about multi-crew play, because you're still looking at this as like a solo ship that you can bung your friends in, and it becomes amazing. It's designed that all the resources of the ship are shared amongst your crew. So I quite like it. Well, anyway, that is it for this week. We hope you liked this video. We hope you found it informative or amusing. And if you did like it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more Star Citizen content. Let us know what you thought about these posts in the comments below. And that is pretty much it. So I'm going to run away now, and we will see you in the week for hopefully a Star Citizen stream, if all goes well. Yes, we should hopefully have some Spectral dramas coming out soon. So thanks everyone. Take it easy. See you soon. Bye bye.